Welcome. This is Ian the Dioramist. That's what I'm calling myself because my name is Ian and I am a dioramist. This is my 1:72 version of the well-known MAID of Harlech P38 wreck off the coast of Wales. I have a whole making of video, actually two of them in two parts, of how I get to this point, but I figured I'd better show you the end result. Otherwise, I'm going to be starting off with a giant piece of bare styrofoam and a piece of masking tape across the middle, which is not exactly what I would call a confidence builder that I could maybe pull this off. Anyway, it is a rather circuitous process I had to undergo to get to this point, with some mistakes along the way and a surprise ending. So if that sort of thing interests you, well, stay tuned. One quick note on my diorama making. This is in 1:72 scale. I've done a lot of that recently, but I'm going to be doing some 1:48 in the future. I tend to make my dioramas on the cheap. For example, I use mainly cheap acrylic paints I buy from Hobby Lobby, which you may know better as Hobby Lobby. It's just that Hobby Lobby is a lot more fun to say. But I use cheap materials when I can. I don't have an airbrush. I buy cheap rattle cans from a hardware store. For my terrain, I buy cheap vinyl spackling from Menards and things like that. And I think that also provides a little interest in the process as well. I'll zoom in a little bit more on my P38. And hopefully you'll stay tuned to see how I get this result. Oh, one last thing to show you. This is one of the reference photos I'll be going by to make the MAID of Harlech. I figured since you saw the end result, you should see the beginning result, so to speak, what I was shooting for. Mine is perhaps a little bit more green at the bottom. The green is darker in the reference photo than it is on the video. But hopefully you'll enjoy the process on how I got from here to what you've already seen. If not, well, there's no accounting for taste, is there? So I've got my base fixed up to start work. Two cheap found pieces of styrofoam taped together in the middle. I'm going to build up the top left. So there's a little bit of almost exposed sand on the beach, and the bottom part I'm going to shave off, since that should represent deeper water as the beach tails off into the ocean, with the P38 in the middle. And then when my P38 model arrives in the mail, it cost about $15 plus a little shipping. I'll start to put that together and weather that so it matches what the MAID of Harlech looks like. I've adapted the P38 model, as you can see, by doing a little bit of cutting with either wire cutters or hobby knife, and then using some needle nose pliers to wrench some of the pieces of plastic off. You can see I've done work on the left wingtip to match what you see in the picture. I've removed some of the cockpit going back towards the back and put in some lattice work that is visible on the real wreckage. Same with the front in the nose cone. I've used a drill to drill a couple of holes that I then cut into the correct shape using a hobby knife, and then put a couple of lattice work pieces in a cross formation, as you can see in the original picture. I've cut holes in the fuselage in a few areas visible on the original picture, and then I used the tips of my wire cutters as well as a hobby knife to create some smaller holes and some dings in both wings, consistent with what you see in the original picture. I've cut open the top of the engine compartments to put the engines in, and those will remain exposed as in the original picture of the wreckage. The tail fin has almost been completely removed, just a little bit left on the right tail fin. The left is entirely gone, as is that bridging wing in the back as well. So now I just have to wait for my P38 1:72 scale engines to arrive in the mail, and then I'll put those in place and add some detail to those as well. Getting back to the base, I've cut open the base just a little bit so the P38 fits correctly. I'll put that in there. It should tilt slightly to this side. What I'll probably do is I'll glue it down on this side first, getting the wingtip as close to the styrofoam as I comfortably can. Then when that's fully done, I'll glue this one down, and then I think it'll have the right angle. It does pay to do the cutting of the styrofoam in this shape with great care to make sure you don't go through the bottom. Don't think I did. Hello there. Oh, that was kind of a mistake. I hope I didn't wreck it. That's a joke, because it's plain wreckage. Anyway, I'm gonna put some of the spackle compound on the base of this to try to seal it a little bit, so when I pour my liquid epoxy resin, it doesn't leak through, which is a huge bother. If you think my wife might get mad about styrofoam particles all over the house, just imagine liquid epoxy resin all over the place. So, actually, she's a really nice lady, so I shouldn't paint her out to be some sort of harpy or anything. Anyway, I feel like I've gotten off the track. So what we'll do then is when my engines arrive, those go in the compartments. I will get the base sealed up with the vinyl spackling and take it from there. And also probably get some flowers to apologize to my wife for all I'm saying, because she really is a nice lady. As you can see, my P38 engines came and I have them fitted in place. Now, just so you know, these are actually side viewing engines that I've turned so the detail faces upwards. I looked around and could not find any 1:72 scale P38 Lightning engines that had a top view or were a whole engine, so I've had to adapt these. How I did that was I cut off the parts that did not have any engine detail and then sanded the right and left sides until they fit in the engine bays. I then, as you can see, fitted out the engine bays by adding some parts in front and behind. They don't have to be perfect or 100% accurate even. I just used the reference photograph of the real MAID of Harlech wreck as my guide. And when these are weathered and covered with sand and silt and such, you're not going to be able to tell much difference between what I did here and the real thing. Now, admittedly, if a P38 Lightning expert came to my house and got his nose a couple inches away from these engines, they might say, well, actually, the cylinders and this and that, aren't accurate. But frankly, I don't hang around with those kind of people, and frankly, I don't care anyway, because in the end, it's going to look enough like the actual picture that it doesn't matter if they're 100% accurate. One of my sayings is, if you can't see it, it doesn't exist, meaning there's no need to get 100% accurate for stuff that in the end is not really going to make any difference. It's the same reason why I'm not going to get too worried about painting the underside of the airplane and doing details that are just going to be covered up. So basically, that's my thoughts on that. The next step will be to paint the airplane aluminum color, since that's the base color of this type of aircraft. And then I'm going to paint flat white in the areas that are sticking out where the aluminum would oxidize with exposure to the air and the elements. And then I'm going to start to weather it, and I'll come back and show you that in a little bit. Regarding the base, my next step is to cover it entirely with vinyl spackling. Let that dry a little to reduce the tackiness, and then I'm going to contour that to match the beach in the reference picture as best I can. When that's all done, I'm going to paint the base, and then I'll be fitting the airplane in there and taking it from there. So I'll come back in a little bit, and we'll see what kind of progress I've made. That's the end of part 1 of the making of the MAID of Harlech by me. If you're still interested, who would be, but On the off chance that you are still interested in seeing how I complete it so it looks not unlike what you see on the screen, tune into part 2. It's also on YouTube.